We have set aside time to hold a work session to discuss some of our infrastructure goings on and kind of everything you ever wanted to know about what we're trying to do with our upcoming stuff with our infrastructure. And so it is a work session, and I will ask the Assistant Town Recorder, Ms. Rachel, to take roll call, please.
Mayor Aiken?
Here.
Alderman Giannini?
Here, ma'am.
Alderman Linfro? Here. Alderman Schaefer?
Here.
Alderman Beachy? Here. Alderman Pierce?
Here.
Alderman Harper?
We are all present. We do have quorum, if you will, for the work session. With that, I'm going to turn it over to, I'm looking at the general direction of Ben Ledzinger or Wesley Yarbrough, whoever, or Ms. Ellen, to lead us forward.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay, y'all have a copy of,
Yes, sir.
okay. All right, so basically what we want to do is kind of give you an update of everything on this agenda. But obviously, I want you to have the opportunity to ask questions. So stop me wherever.
I guess I've had already made a full pop, Mr. Grant.
Yes, sir.
Has anybody got a public comment
No, sir.
back there?
I didn't remember this.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
That's exactly my point. Stop me if you need to. So first things first, Main Street lift station.
Excellent.
All right. Plans have been approved by TDEC. We have agreement, let's say unofficial, because we don't have documents signed yet. The trust, the Walker Trust, has agreed to donate the property to the town. So we're in the process of an agreement, getting that together with the town attorney, and an appraisal, because they want to be able to donate it and write it off on their taxes, so an appraisal is required. Once we have those, we have submitted the documents to TDEC for pre-approval of the bid. Once we have the property signed, we can put this out to bid. That will allow, we're expecting that to happen in a month to 6 weeks, to have all the paperwork done, the review back, and the ability to put this out to bid. That will allow us not to, I don't expect them to start work immediately. What I expect them to do is to order pumps. Most of y'all are aware, those are long lead items. They take probably 20 weeks to get here. And so that will allow that to happen over the winter time. So that we'll begin construction season next spring. Okay? We will not have to wait to start for the pumps. We can start on wet wells, we can start on things, but it will let that couple months of that winter time when we can't be working for the pumps to be working their way to us. That is the general overview of that. Any questions about the Main Street lift station?
Well, Ben, I mean, I'm glad to hear 20 weeks, because I know y'all went down to Wesley and Clark, and somebody else went down to New Orleans, and they were talking with a guy that was telling them 48 weeks out
somewhere in
for
that
the
range,
pump.
yeah.
Well,
Excuse me, but yeah.
let's hope he's wrong and what I heard is correct.
But you're
let's-
absolutely right. Time is of the essence.
Yes.
If you are looking at a 48 week, I mean, yeah.
then we
We're
got
looking
to
at a long time.
Yeah.
and fully acknowledge that stuff changes, right? And so if he's talked to them sooner than I have and talked to the people,
Talked to him last week.
it could be different. So the point is, though, we got to get going so that we can get these pumps ordered, and that's what we're trying to do.
Any problem, do we foresee any problem with the meter? Is it gonna have any kind of lead time like that too?
I have not heard any.
Okay.
Probably 4 to 6 weeks, maybe.
Okay, so that's not gonna be nothing compared to, yeah.
To the pumps, yes, sir.
I mean,
And
that
just-
water.
Yeah, go ahead, Wesley.
No, I'm good.
So just to refresh the board, one of the requirements put on us by Mumford with the moratorium lifting and the wastewater, the new wastewater agreement, so forth and so on, is that we install a new meter along with this. I know y'all remember that, but that's gonna be part of just us checking the boxes to make sure we're good with Mumford too. So
That's correct,
Yes.
and it's included in the design already,
Right.
and it's part of the plans.
Mhm.
All right. Any other questions about Main Street? Okay. Item 3 is the Mead Lake force main replacement. So the first thing there you're seeing is some property surveys. As we decided on a route, we mainly went back with in the existing alignment, okay? What we assumed and were wrong about was that existing easements were filed and that we had those in place already. Those have not been filed. So there are no existing easements recorded. Now, because we have the pipe there, we can claim it by prescription because we've got infrastructure in place. We do actually keep people from building over it. All that stuff is happening, but this surveys are going to help us file easements so that going forward, people know, hey, I can't put a building across this because there's a sewer easement there. That's on my property. When they buy it, they'll see it, right? So that's part of the property surveys. Also, as part of that, we're picking up a market data brochure. In order to adhere to the Uniform Act, since we have federal dollars, we have to go through a process to make an offer. If we anticipate that the damages to a property are $10,000 and under, we can make what's called a nominal partial payment offer. But we have to have something to base that offer on. Okay? A market data brochure basically will give us a price, an estimate or an appraisal of the types of property along the corridor. And when I say types, I mean zoning types. That gives us something that if we were to get questioned about how we came up with our offer, we have this market data, we use these numbers, we took that square foot price by the square foot of the easement that we are using here, because there's a couple places where we're not in the existing alignment, right? So we will have to acquire those. So part of what you're seeing on the property survey also includes that market data brochure, okay? I think you've got
Proposal.
they do have a proposal for all that, okay?
It's in the board packet for this tonight's board meeting.
And on that 10,000, that is 10,000 per property or 10,000 total for the?
10,000 per property on
Okay.
damages. And so what, it's a threshold, right? If it's more than 10,000, you have to get a specific appraisal and a review appraiser. If it's less than 10,000, and you can justify why it's less than 10,000, then you can do this nominal payment partial offer. The market data brochure, like I said, gives us a data point to say this is how we're coming up with that offer. Okay? All right. Anything else about the property surveys before I go on to the levy discussion? Okay. As y'all know, Mead Lake runs across the Mead Lake levee. We also have our force main in that levee. So that's an unusual situation where you have a public street on a private levee to a private lake. We've been looking at how to do that because we know we're going to put back a new pipe. So we would be disturbing that levee to do that. There's a risk there that we could do something that would compromise that levee. And so we kind of looked at all options about how to handle it. One of the things, ideally, in a perfect world, we would separate the two. There'd be a completely separate levee, and the pond would not be on our road, and the road would have no impact on the lake, right? But that comes with a cost because we would be the ones initiating it. We'd have to come up with how, funding that levee. So here's the thing. We have had some initial discussions with the property owners. We've agreed to come back with some options with them. They are open to working with us, but no agreements have been made, okay? We've just agreed to talk and figure this out. We've had some initial discussions with the grantees about dealing with this in the grant. They are open to that because we ran into it because of the grant work, okay? That, we've also had some initial conversations with geotechnical engineer. The geotechnical engineer is a soils expert for those of you who don't buy geotechnical services. So all this to try to decide what's the best way forward. And the answer is, we've got a couple options. We can, we believe, based on our consultation with our geotech, open cut this and lay that pipe back in the existing levee if we lower the water in the lake and then compact it back with clay like the levee and keep going. That is the cheapest option, okay? That said, we still have a private lake on a public road, on a levee that we would have responsibility over. It does not remove that risk from our roadway, okay? And 2010, it overtops.
Yes.
There is a possibility that it overtops when you have a big rain and it goes over that levee, and that's how you lose it. When water goes over a levee, it tumbles down the backside and erodes from back to front and cuts it, okay? So that risk would still be there. Another option is to consider building a levee, you have to drain the lake again, build a levee next to it, separate the two, build them an outlet. Then if they overtop their levee, it would go into our roadside ditch under and gone. Our road would be fine. That is a longer term, better option, but is going to cost more money now. Okay? So, big picture, those are our two choices. We would be looking for some guidance from you guys, what you would prefer. And then, of course, we would have to go and negotiate with the property owners and make sure that they were okay with this option. I will say in our initial discussions, they are open to the discussion both ways. They have some concerns, and then I think they're legitimate concerns as property owners, but I do believe that we can work this out. So, long story short, we'd be looking for some input from you guys on which way you would suggest we proceed.
Sir, I have a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
The cheaper way, how long, you said packing in with clay, excuse me, how long the risk of it failing, what's the typical life expectancy of doing it that way? So you say it's a short-term fix. You said using the other method was a longer-term fix. So what's the time, how long do we expect this cheaper way to last?
Okay, let me restate then. I don't mean short-term, long-term. I mean short-term, it's cheaper, but there's more risk to it. If you, according to my conversations with the property owners, the pond has been there since the railroad was installed. It's a bar pit that was dug when the railroad was done. So it's been there that long, okay? So if taken care of and maintained, and we don't get a rainfall event that overtops it, it could be there two lifetimes from now, okay? The trick will be is if we get that rainfall event that overtops it again. I don't know, I wish I could tell you when that might happen, I can't.
Back in 2010, it overtopped the levee and washed out on the backside, exposing the sewer main on the backside. Everybody kind of remembers back in 2010.
Yep.
It was the same time as the mill.
Yes, sir.
That's correct.
It was.
And the risk is how long that flood occurs. The longer it occurs, the longer time you have water over top of the levee, the more risk there is.
Okay, so back to my original question. How long, is this a permanent solution? Either choice is a permanent solution?
Yes, both of them, given that you don't overtop the roadway and that you maintain it, both of them are permanent solutions until the next time we have to replace the pipe. The design life of the pipe should be about 30 years, 30 to 50. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Is there a middle ground? Is there the possibility of stabilizing the other side of that levee? So if we did have an over event, we would have, not just dirt?
There is. That is one of the narrowest sections of right-of-way that we have along Mead Lake Road. So we could do that option, and that's something we talked about with our geotechnical engineer, and build up that slope on the backside and then armor that slope, pick a spot and make, a spot where we direct the water to and have it come down like an emergency spillway on a typical pond. We would have to buy some right-of-way, But yes, that is a middle option. Can't talk with my hands. Okay.
I know you can't give an exact number, but between the lowest cost and the most expensive option, I mean, are we talking
Double, triple.
double, triple?
Order of magnitude, if you were to, all in, we kind of roughly guesstimated that a separate levy is gonna cost about $500,000. And that is an educated guess number, ballpark number, okay?
I'm not gonna hold you to these numbers.
Yeah. If we lay the pipe, if we open cut the pipe, we were doing that anyway. So that's like the bare minimum, right? So coming back with some clay backfill on top of that, you're talking $20,000, $25,000, okay? If you do the interim option, we're probably looking to spend less than half of the 500. Would probably be less, probably 100 to 150, somewhere in there. So now, all these things are potentially grant fundable, right? Okay, and let me say this about that. So that means that you have a match on that, but you're planning on paying that match anyway. What it really does, okay, and this is the actual impact of it. The more of the grant funds that we use not putting force main in the ground, the bigger the SRF portion of the force main is. Okay? So you borrow less money, the cheaper option that you use at the levy. But you gamble the risk in the future, and you have to decide what risk you really have. Does that make sense? So I wish I could tell you all the best answer. I do. But the best I think I can do is tell you the options and what your risks are.
Ben, I think either option, we need to work on that backside. I just don't see us not doing anything to that backside.
Okay.
But, you know, that would be what my suggestion to the board, because I was thinking before these gentlemen asked it, it's like y'all ain't said nothing about that backside. And when that guy cut all those trees and did all that stuff, we really were worried about what's gonna happen to this.
Which we washed it all this year pretty much.
Yeah.
And it has not leaked. It showed a little bit, but it was not leaking from the levee. We had rain out there as well too.
Right.
It was not showing any
I mean,
leaks.
while we're doing it, why don't we fix this, get that backside better?
Okay.
Do it right, because look at the mountains right now. And I know this is, again, once in a lifetime type event, but if we're in that same situation, maybe that reinforcement helps at least some to keep that road there. Who knows? But I mean, 2010, I'm sure it probably got close in 2011 too, with all the rain that was
Pretty
there.
close.
So I mean, that's 2 years back to back, and that's 14 years ago. So who knows what we'll see in the next 20.
That's true. Okay, so
I mean, I'll keep talking. I like, the board has always been good in doing things that we've had to replace, we're doing them better. We're fixing them like they probably should have been originally.
yes, sir.
If you're talking 20 times more expensive, what I need to know from you is I'm getting 20 times out of it. I mean, I know you said it's preferred, but if I can do the backside and I can work on the first option, and you're telling me it's good, then that's something they have to, decide on. But that's what I'm looking for you. Is it worth 20 times the cost?
If it were me, especially after I talked to our geotechnical engineer, and I would do some repairs to the backside and lay the pipe back where it is, open cut and recompact it, and then I would manage that levee.
Yeah.
That means I've got to
Yeah.
get some right of way there,
Yeah.
but then I've got to manage it and maintain it. And I think what we'll have the opportunity to do, we've got to lower the pond to do that work. Well, I think that the property owner, and I don't want to speak for them, but
Right.
in my initial conversations, they would like the opportunity to remove some sediment from the pond. Okay? If they get that chance, then that increases the ability of the storage capacity of the pond. Okay? So I think there's an opportunity to do some maintenance both sides if we work together with them. So that would be what I would do, but it is, it's a monetary decision, and ultimately, that's up to y'all. So I will do whatever y'all want.
Let me ask one more, I guess, long-term question. Let's say that we do have a catastrophic event and the roadway is overtaken. So the current situation, if it's overtaken, that's our roadway on a private levee, is there recourse that they can come after the town said, hey, this is the roadway helped cause this? And it's kind of second part there, you're saying that, building a second levee, if it overtakes theirs, then we have at least some stormwater mitigation there. Not saying it couldn't still fail, but there's a potential that it could. Do we, as a town at that point, have a recourse of saying, well, your pond caused this? It's all, I guess, a liability question, but is that kind of where we're looking at that too?
So right now, and we talked a little bit about this, but we haven't dug deep into the outlet portion of this, okay? Right now, the outlet to the pond is at the driveway, the corner of the driveway. It runs over the driveway and into, I guess it's a double 36?
Yes.
A double 36 corrugated plastic pipe. Is it a single?
Single.
Okay. And it actually runs through the hill to the next culvert south and drops into that culvert and then goes to that creek. Okay?
Which we put in probably back in 2014, I think, when we got ready to extend Mead Lake a little bit far wider. We put that culvert in, I think it's about 14, 15, somewhere in that range when we put that in.
Yeah. So typically you don't run drainage outside of its basin. In fact, if you were to flood someone downstream and you go to court and you tell them, I put water out of this basin into that basin, you've lost. Okay? That's not critical here because the creek that it's receiving is within sight of both places. Does that make sense? You're so close to the downstream. You understand what I'm saying? So, but if we were to set up a second levee, they would have then an emergency spillway in it. We would drop that emergency spillway in and bring a culvert out under the road back where it's supposed to be. And so that water would come over into their drop structure under our road and out. So it would greatly reduce the chance that we overtop our road in the future. So there would also be a roadside ditch between the bottom of their levee and the bottom of our road bed, right? So there'd be additional storage right there. But that's the $500,000-ish option. So, Mr. Mayor, to answer your question, is it 20 times better? I can't tell you that it is. So it greatly reduces the risk, but nothing eliminates it, because you're talking about, if you want to talk about East Tennessee, you're talking about 30 inches of rain.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do that can plan for that we'd be willing to pay for. So, sorry to bring y'all a thorny one, but
What's the board's guidance?
I like extending and reinforcing that middle ground.
Yeah.
It gives something there, but not 500,000 second levy type.
And you said if we did go with the cheaper option, we have to make sure we're doing upkeep. What kind of cost is that upkeep every year?
so let's say you're doing this where you're upkeeping if you do the absolute cheapest option, we need to be upkeeping that roadside on both sides to make sure that we're not getting any erosion, and we're watching that all the time and correcting it as soon as we see it.
What would that ballpark, again, no gun in your head, but what would that ballpark be?
Couple $1,000s a year probably, give or take, just depending on drainage and all that kind of stuff. Which we kind of maintain the side of it anyways, we cut it back, but rock and all that stuff we haven't put in the last couple of years there.
And you'd have that odd year where it's going to be bigger than that. You're going to get a big rain, but that's just part of what it is. So.
But again, if we're able to, like you said, put some kind of cover over it, some protection, and then that'll reduce that, not eliminate, but reduce that
Yes, sir.
potential.
Correct.
So is that a motion, Cody?
Do we need a motion, or is it just,
Just
The work
work
session.
Just work
yeah, I was gonna say, it's just a direction here.
Okay, you got direction, man?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir, we do.
At least from Cody?
John shook his head, yes.
Anybody else?
I think I saw most.
Your suggestion was kind of the spillway option?
The middle
The middle
ground.
ground.
Middle ground.
Reinforce the
Basically
backside.
controlling the overflow at a
Yeah,
location.
build up the downstream slope and picking a spot and controlling it down.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
okay, yeah, I'm with that.
Okay.
I mean, it seems like we're gonna be managing the water much better than it is right now,
Yes, sir.
Promise, yes, sir.
period.
Yes, sir.
So,
Okay. All right, that brings us to item C, which I kind of alluded to it. When the bid price comes in for the Main Street lift station, we were awarded 8.2 in competitive grant funds, right?
8192650.
Thank you,
Thanks,
sir.
It'll
That
prob-
number
It'll
that,
probably be on my tombstone.
well, and if you want it, I think it'd be okay. So we reduced that number by about 2 million that we gave to the non-competitive for the lagoon. So we have about 6 remaining, okay? So we're gonna bid out the Main Street lift station, which we expect to be $2 million or a little bit less than that, I think is what we're thinking. Then that leaves us, and big round numbers, guys, 4 to do the first phase of the force main with grant funds, okay? So what we're trying to decide is how far does that $4 million take us? Where do we stop? And then the next phase becomes SRF, okay? So that's the things that we're watching right now, and what's happening next is that we're gonna bid the Main Street project. By some crazy thing, if Main Street comes in $1.5 million, then we've got an extra $500,000 to put on the grant portion of the force main. We're gonna extend it north $500,000 worth. With the point being, we're gonna spend every dollar we can on the grant funds on the force main, and then use what's left with SRF and try to borrow as little as possible, okay? This line item is basically to communicate that to you. It will include the grant portion right now, we anticipate will include the additional water and sewer that needs to get installed at those couple of residences along Mead Lake, okay?
Okay.
Because approximately our delineation as we see it right now is somewhere around the Johnson Lake area, okay? But those numbers are what's driving that decision, okay? Any questions about that?
As far as pipe, are we increasing the size of the pipe and putting the same in? What-
We're going to a 12 inch from a 10 to a 12.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Basically, it'd be like almost a 14 with the diameter of pipe we were gonna go with HDP pipe. It's a little bit bigger.
You had me to you, that last part there, Wesley.
It's just,
What
that
am I
diameter,
getting, what am I getting more flow with that, Ben? What's it take me from if a 10 can do this, what's 12 can do?
Well, roughly it's 20%. I mean,
Well, I know that.
I mean, but it's, and in this case, that's exactly it. You have, except a pump changed that, right? But for easy to talk about numbers, it is strictly 20%, because the inside smoothness of that pipe, which is frankly the single most important factor on how much you can get through it, that friction, is about the same with what we have and what we're putting back. The difference in what we're putting back is that what you have now is not pressure rated to what we're putting through it, and what we're putting back is. So Wesley should not
rephrase
be
the
having to
question.
fix it.
We're future-proofing this pipe, right?
yes, sir, we are.
That's what I need to know.
Yes, sir.
Thank
Sorry for the long-winded
you. No,
explanation.
no, that's, you're an engineer, man. That's what you do.
Unfortunately, it's what we do.
Yeah.
Any other questions about that delineation and how we're trying to do that?
I do have one back question on the levy. Can I back?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
You'd mentioned a public road on a private levy, right? So in all of this, do we have the ability to acquire? Do we want to acquire that, so now that levy becomes town property?
So you own right away on the, we'll call it the top 25-ish feet, okay? So you on the very top, and that goes up and down, right?
Right.
So, and that's what's weird. The town owns that levee to a private lake. That's what's unusual. I will say I can't think of anywhere else that condition occurs. So you have a right of way, it's narrow, but you have it. So it's not down the slopes very far, but it's there.
So, to channel Alderman Deitchie, you didn't really answer his question.
I'm sorry.
Am I right? You good?
I don't know if he can explain it.
Are you saying there's no need to acquire it because we already have
The right of way.
that right of way?
Well, you have the center, and I guess to your point, if we're gonna do some stuff on the backside, we've gotta acquire additional. That way we can go do it and maintain it. And we don't necessarily have to acquire a right of way, we can acquire an easement. So that means they can still own it, we can just have the right to maintain it.
Because on up the road, we're the same situation. Those are private lakes up the road too.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And Mead Lake's right of way, if y'all look on Property Viewer or Tipton County GIS, it gets big and then little and big. Well, the places that it gets little are those levees.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
100% correct.
So, all right.
Number 4.
ARPA grant requirements. So this, and we've had discussions about this, we're beginning to do reimbursements. So Rachel sent a lot of stuff today that Ellen's been working through. Long story short, you're going to see us send some paperwork through. One of the fun things today, are we gonna have to possibly send an amendment? There's a possibility we may send a contract amendment through to include some language that says we agree to follow all federal laws. Just to fulfill the grant requirements, okay? Yeah. I'm not gonna say anything else about it. We're gonna obey all the federal laws and spend this money correctly. Is there anything else you wanted to make known about that?
Ellen.
Hello. So we have decided that we are going to submit reimbursements monthly, and by the end of the month, we can do it as often as monthly, or we absolutely have to do it quarterly. They'll be checking in, TDEC will be checking in. I did compile the invoices we have right now that we can submit for reimbursement by the end of the month for this month. Right now, we can only submit SSR engineering invoices, but some of them date back to 2023. So I do have a number to show you if you wanted, like $330,000 for reimbursement getting back.
303.
Yeah, I just wanted. There is a column for the total invoice amount, and then it's split between 85-15. So we are getting reimbursed, or you guys are getting reimbursed 85% of each invoice. And TDEC is saying that it's gonna take 30 days to get reimbursed, potentially sooner, but at least 30 days once it's submitted.
But
That's why we're gonna try to do monthly, just to
Yes.
stay on top of it with
Yes, sir.
them, with their 30-day window and so forth and so on.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
And going forward, just because we're to that point, you're gonna see these regularly. We're gonna pick up construction dollars the same way, and then we'll be moving through all of these projects.
Okay.
Any questions about that piece? Okay. SRF, loan status update. We have preliminarily submitted a project. You have to get on SRF's list, right? We have a project that isn't what we believed at that time. Again, I told y'all, once we get the exact bid number from Main Street, then that's gonna set the grant, and that's what's left is gonna be the SRF, right? But we have a project we've submitted of the force main to SRF. It's being evaluated and will get ranked on their list. And then as we determine the final, we can always ask for less. You can't ask for more, so we erred on the big side on the front end, okay? But long story short, that is moving ahead pending those other things that I told you about, trying to figure out the exact amount of that project, okay? It will be there are timelines, as y'all well know, on the grant projects, okay? So when we first did this, the places that we are outside the right-of-way are predominantly north of State Route 206. We've always intended for that to be in the SRF because sometimes property acquisition can take time, and we did not want that pressure on the grant projects, right? So we had always planned on that northern section being SRF, one, for budgetary reasons, but two, because the right-of-way acquisition piece wouldn't end up in the grant and potentially hold us up on the grant side. As y'all know, we have to have all the money on the grant side spent by September of 2026. So,
Any questions?
yeah, any questions or discussion about that? Okay. All right, so the infrastructure planning grant projects are the water model, the sewer model, and the asset management plan. Everybody,
Run it by me again?
a water model, a sewer model, and an asset management plan. If y'all recall, on our scorecard, an asset management plan was one of our deficiencies that we had to address. All right, the infrastructure planning grants are through ECD, okay, Economic and Community Development, where our ARPA grants are through TDEC. Okay, so different agency. We've gotten a contract back from them. We've got the reimbursement accounts set up. Clark and his team have started in on the modeling. And what that modeling is going to allow you to do is see where you don't have fire pressure, or add a development and see how that impacts the total system, right? So it's going to help with future planning, and we think help us chase some future improvements.
Yes, 100%.
So, and then getting the asset management plan done through another grant that was required on the ARPA side, that just worked out really well. That's all I can say about that. Any questions about that as we go? Okay. And guys, we can go backwards if you think of something, but I'm just gonna keep going forward until y'all tell me to stop.
Okay.
All right. TDOT stream mitigation project. So we had some discussions with them 2 months ago now.
Yeah.
And basically they are adding a meander to the channel basically through Walker Park, right? As part of that, they had not done any modeling to determine how that affected the water surface elevation in and around Walker Park. Well, as y'all know, at times the whole park floods, and we actually have a home that actually gets water in it down on the Kern Circle, thank you. So we made them aware of this and said, hey, we really need you to run some modeling and tell us how this affects the water surface elevation. And we really need for it to go down. So they agreed to do that and have actually said,
Sometime, hopefully this week or next, we should be hearing back from them.
we should be hearing back from them any week about that modeling. So once that modeling comes back to us and we confirm that it does actually drop the water, or they make some changes to help drop the water, then that will be moving forward. That is completely in TDOT's hands, but we are reviewing and staying on top of it.
So what's gonna mitigate the chances of flooding a home down there? I mean, would this be something they dig deeper, they put a berm, we get a berms put up, I mean, or am I just totally off kilter here?
There's a couple different ways that they could mitigate it.
Yeah.
We believe that they'll see it in the heck grass and they'll come back with some options. If they don't, we've discussed some options that we're gonna suggest to them. And then we're gonna ask that they model those and bring them back to us is what's gonna happen.
Pretty much a berm or something like that.
Okay.
You know.
So, but there's a couple different ways that it can be done. So, point is, we didn't feel like this board or us could look our citizens in the eye and if we didn't ask them to at least calculate this and talk to us and show us what they're planning on doing and what the
So-
effect is gonna be.
I've got some citizens that live right there on J Blades that, you know, I've been telling them now for 2 years plus, actually 3 or 4 years, that, hey, TDOT's they're gonna do some mitigation down here. Just stay with me. Wheels turn slow, but they turn.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
When the modeling comes back this week, ballpark figure, not gonna hold you to it, when are we gonna start seeing some type of activity from TDOT, do you think? Second quarter, third quarter, 25, 26, what?
Once they finish up the plans, and I'm gonna admit that this is a bit of a educated guess, okay? Which is another way of saying, don't hold me to this.
Yeah.
They'll come back with what the water surface elevation is. If they have to adjust their plans, which we think that they probably will, I would expect that would take through the winter, probably take 3 more months.
That's good.
Then there's really no right of way for them to get. It's all city-owned property.
City-owned.
So they should be able to go to construction at that point. They'll have to certify the right of way, which means they may come and ask us for a letter proving we own it, okay? But then they should be able to go to construction at that point, and it will depend on how they funded it, but they could be to construction as early as next year sometime.
Okay.
So, if you will let us, when we talk to them about this modeling, we will ask that question and get you an answer from them. That way, when
The
you're.
clock started ticking when Mayor Walker was here.
Yes, sir.
So I know it's gotta be 3, 4 years already,
Yes, sir.
so,
It's been a while.
yeah, okay,
So, but you were not wrong when you said the wheels turn slow, but they turn.
yeah, yeah.
So, any other questions about that one? Okay. All right, the TAP grant. So, the TAP grant is the most recent, I guess, award that we've gotten. We now have a executed contract with the state on this one, and we've been given the authorization to advertise. I believe that you have you've been working on the advertisement?
Yes, we're working on the advertisement.
Okay. And so the next thing that will happen is we will get that to you guys and to the state. The state will need to approve it, and then we'll decide when we put it out. And basically, we're putting it out for professional services. So the multimodal, which we'll talk about in a second, TDOT is designing it for us. That's not the case on the TAP because the multimodal is on a state route, TDOT will design it for you. TAP, the whole premise of it is that you don't use it on a state route, use it on local routes. Well, they want you to design that, so we're gonna go get a designer. So, okay. But that's where it stands at the moment. Any questions about it? And it just for everybody's memory, it is on putting sidewalks on Kimbrough, down to Nancy Lane Park. Thank you.
In Virginia Street.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I'm looking at 25 for that one.
Yes, sir.
With line.
Yes, sir.
With line.
With lighting. So we're
Second
trying
quarter, third quarter.
You ought to get that advertisement out this fall. You'll get it selected. And then what'll have to happen is it will have to follow the same LPA process, which will be, they're gonna give you a notice to proceed to do NEPA. You'll do design, then you'll do right-of-way. That will have some right-of-way that has to be acquired. And then construction. So probably 26 on it.
Oh, wow,
The right-of-way process and the NEPA process can both be lengthy,
okay.
so. All right, the multimodal grant, that is the one that the state is designing. Okay, we've had some meetings with them very recently. They've shown us, what they have as far as plans. Their construction estimate, they believe, was higher than the budget. We've had some initial conversations, and I believe that we have that worked out. We've got some ways forward, bottom line. They are going to go ahead and design the entire project, which puts sidewalk on State Route 206 from 51 down all the way to the three-way, over and up, and connects to Nancy Lane Park. Okay? It is sidewalk on one side, not both. Okay? But it makes that pedestrian connection from our oldest part of town up to the post office, the grocery store, to the church, to those things. They can pay their water bill without having to get in the car. They can walk up and take care of those things. So we felt making that total connection was better than having it on both sides. Okay? So,
And that's pretty far along. I mean, they pretty much got that designed, right?
yes, they,
Yeah, the last meeting that I sat in on, yeah.
yeah. So we've had discussions this week. Like I said, they've agreed that they're gonna go with, the premise that they're doing it all. You know, at that last meeting, they were talking about, all right, we don't have enough money, we're gonna cut it somewhere. We're gonna design it all, we're gonna acquire the right of way on all of it. So, then, we've got some ways to get it all funded, and we're moving ahead that way, okay? I would expect, because TDOT is designing it, and TDOT will acquire the right of way, that will be a 26 project construction, okay? I wish right of way, the two longest things are NEPA and right of way, all right? And they said 12 to 20 months on right of way. I would anticipate, I'm hoping 12. There's no reason it couldn't be done in 12. But that's why I say 26 construction. Okay. All right. Main Street Roundabout. So pretty much the preliminary design is done. What we need to do is we've got some surveying in our surveying proposal to establish that right of way. And those, and some parcels there that we have to acquire are part of the market data brochure, okay? Once we have those, then we'll set that line, and we'll talk about, with those property owners, basically we're gonna negotiate about purchasing some property. I think that we're gonna go ahead and have a conversation with them, show them what we're talking about, get them thinking about it, but we can't make an offer for a bit until we have these numbers back. But that's where it stands. If everything goes according to what I think, we should be building this next year in about the second quarter. So, pending no, you know, we don't get hung up in right of way or something crazy like that. So.
And then I'm just gonna assume that right hand is talking to the left hand in terms of roundabout and multimodal and, you know.
Yes, we've gotten their plans, we're sending them ours. That's actually some of them, they've got a crosswalk and a rapid flashing beacon that they're putting in, and with our roundabout, they don't have to, so we're coordinating that back and forth.
Good.
Yes, sir. Good question, though. All right, guys, any questions about any of this? It's been a lot, and I appreciate your patience.
Well, we got a lot going on. I mean, it's a good thing.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. 25 and 26 gonna be a busy thing going on around here.
That's right.
Yes, sir. Lots of orange barrels. Okay. Anything you want to add? Okay, well, guys,
Any other questions for Ben Westman?
again,
All right.
thank y'all for your time.
Thank you, guys.
That's good.
All right, if we don't have any other comments or questions, I got 6:49. We will adjourn the work session, and we will meet back here at 7 p.m. October meeting. Hit the